Have you ever noticed how unfair the world really is? The unsettling truth is right in front of you, though most people refuse to admit it. We are told to believe in justice, equality, and reciprocity, but reality rarely plays by those rules. Look around, how many times have you seen someone less intelligent than you being admired? How many times have you watched someone weaker than you command more respect? And how often have you noticed someone with fewer skills living the exact life you want? Not because they worked harder, but because they understood something darker, the hidden psychology of power. The world is not fair, and deep down, you already know it. You feel it every time you give more than you get back. You sense it when kindness is mistaken for weakness, when patience turns into invisibility, when playing by the rules only guarantees you'll finish last. Fairness, as you've been taught, is a comforting illusion designed to keep you tame, compliant, and predictable. Niccolò Machiavelli saw this centuries ago. Living in a world of betrayal, political intrigue, and endless struggle for dominance, he stripped away the illusions and stared straight into the brutal mechanics of human nature. What he discovered was both terrifying and liberating. Good men are often sacrificed on the altar of ideals, while ruthless strategists rise to power. It is much safer to be feared than loved, Machiavelli declared, not because cruelty is noble, but because reality rewards strength over purity, strategy over sincerity. This video is not about turning you into a villain. It is about pulling back the curtain, exposing the game that has been rigged against you since birth, and equipping you with the tools to stop being a victim of fairness and start becoming a master of power. Because only when you stop playing fair will you realize just how much influence you are truly capable of wielding. Before we dive into the lessons that can reshape the way you see yourself and the world, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. That way, I'll be the first to know when I release the next video filled with insights that challenge the illusions you've been living under. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. I want to take you back to a chapter of my life that still lingers in my memory like a scar. I was the kind of person who did everything right. I worked hard. I stayed honest. I spoke with sincerity. I believed that if I just kept being genuine, if I just kept being competent, sooner or later, people would recognize my worth. But that recognition never came. Instead, I watched as others people with half my skills, people who never stayed late or gave their best rose above me. They had something I didn't. It wasn't intelligence. It wasn't an effort. It wasn't even talent. It was present. It was the ability to manipulate perception, to command attention, to seize opportunities before I even noticed they existed. I'll never forget sitting in a meeting room, my hands full of carefully prepared notes, ready to present an idea I had worked on for weeks. I waited patiently for my turn, rehearsing every line in my mind. And then, before I could speak, someone louder, someone more confident, but with no real substance jumped in, tossed out a half-formed version of my idea, and received all the praise I had been craving. My heart sank as the room nodded in approval, clapping for a thief of ideas, while I sat there in silence, invisible. Moments like these repeated themselves again and again. I watched promotions go to people who knew how to flatter the right managers. I saw social circles revolve around those who exuded charisma but lacked integrity. And I began to realize a bitter truth. The world doesn't reward what is fair. It rewards what's powerful. That realization broke me. For a time, I lived with quiet resentment, asking myself, why can't they see my worth? Why isn't my effort enough? But slowly something shifted. I started to recognize the invisible strings being pulled around me. I began to see that while I was busy being good, others were busy being strategic. And maybe you felt this too. Maybe you've been in love with the idea that people will naturally appreciate your authenticity, that patience will eventually pay off, that goodness will be recognized. And yet, life keeps slapping you with the same cold lesson. Being intelligent, hardworking, even kind, it doesn't guarantee respect. Tell me honestly, have you ever found yourself in this same position? The overlooked one, the underestimated one, the one who has the answers but no one listens, the one who gives everything and receives little in return. If you have, then you know the pain of invisibility. You know what it feels like to watch others leap ahead while you stay stuck in the background. But here's the awakening moment. What feels like weakness is not your destiny. What feels like invisibility is not permanent. It is simply the result of playing by rules that were never designed to protect you. Machiavelli once wrote that those who understand human psychology rule those who don't. And for too long, I, like you perhaps, was ruled by illusions of fairness, trapped in a game I never understood. That was the day I decided to stop being invisible. To truly understand why fairness fails and why ruthlessness often wins, we must look back 5 centuries to a man who had the courage to write what everyone else was too afraid to admit: Niccolò Machiavelli. Machiavelli was not born into an ivory tower of comfort. He lived in Florence during one of the most volatile periods of Italian history, a time of endless wars, shifting alliances, betrayals, and ruthless rulers clawing for survival. He served in politics, watched power change hands overnight, and witnessed firsthand how leaders rose to greatness only to be destroyed by their own illusions. Out of this chaos, he carved a philosophy of power so piercing, so unapologetically honest, that it still terrifies people today. His most infamous line has echoed through centuries: "It is much safer to be feared than loved." To many, this sounds cruel. It sounds like an endorsement of tyranny. But Machiavelli's point wasn't to glorify cruelty. It was to strip away our comforting illusions and reveal the cold reality of human behavior. He wasn't telling us to abandon morality. He was showing us what actually happens when morality meets power. Think about it. Love is fragile. People may love you today, but love shifts with mood, convenience, and circumstance. Fear, however, creates boundaries. Fear commands respect, even when affection fades. Machiavelli was pointing to a deeper truth. Influence is not built on how good you are, but on how effectively you navigate the darker instincts of human psychology. This is why his philosophy still matters. Because while centuries have passed, human nature has not changed. People still manipulate, betray, and seek advantage. They still respect strength over sincerity, presence over purity, strategy over fairness. And when you cling to the belief that being noble alone will secure your place in the world, you make yourself vulnerable to those who already understand the game Machiavelli described. But here is the critical insight most people miss. Machiavelli did not simply advocate cruelty. He advocated clarity. He told us, stop assuming people will treat you fairly. Stop expecting loyalty from those driven by self-interest. Stop living under illusions that only make you weak. His philosophy is not an invitation to abandon goodness, but to anchor it in strength, to fuse morality with strategy, sincerity with psychological awareness. Carl Jung once observed that everything irritating in others points us back to something unacknowledged within ourselves. In the same way, Machiavelli forces us to confront the uncomfortable shadow of human nature, that power is rarely distributed by fairness, but seized by those willing to face reality as it is not as they wish it to be. So ask yourself, are you willing to see the world as Machiavelli saw it? Not as a battlefield of ideals, but as a chessboard of strategies. Are you willing to accept that the rules you've been taught since childhood, be nice, play fair, wait your turn, are the very illusions that keep you trapped? Because if you are, then you will begin to understand why Machiavelli's philosophy is not darkness, it is illumination. It is the key to stop being manipulated and start shaping your own destiny. In the next section, we will go beyond theory and enter practice. We will explore the 8 dark principles of power that Machiavelli uncovered, principles that still determine who rises and who falls in the silent wars of influence being fought around you every single day. Now that we've stripped away the illusion of fairness, it's time to walk directly into the battlefield of human psychology. These are not abstract ideas. They are the mechanics of influence that Machiavelli observed centuries ago, and they remain just as lethal today. Each principle is a weapon. Each one reveals why good men finish last, and why ruthless strategists rise. Let's go one by one. 1. Fairness is a trap you've been conditioned since childhood to play fair. Share your toys. Wait for your turn. Treat others the way you want to be treated. But in the adult world, this conditioning is the very reason you keep losing. Fairness is a noble idea in theory, but in practice, it makes you predictable. And predictable people are easy to exploit. How many times have you respected someone who gave you nothing in return? How many times have you helped someone who never helped you back? How many times have you waited patiently for recognition while others cut the line and took what you wanted? This isn't bad luck. It's psychology. Machiavelli warned us, men should either be treated generously or destroyed, because they take revenge for slight injuries. For heavy ones, they cannot. In other words, half measures are deadly. When you give a little and expect fairness in return, you invite retaliation and disappointment. But when you understand that fairness doesn't exist in power dynamics, you stop waiting for reciprocity and start creating outcomes that serve your interests. Fairness is the trap. Strength and clarity are the way out. 2. Ruthlessness is emotional discipline. Most people think being ruthless means being cruel or explosive. They imagine anger, shouting, fists slamming on tables. But Machiavelli and every great strategist since knew that true ruthlessness is not about losing control. It's about mastering it. To be ruthless is to discipline your emotions so completely that no one can manipulate you. It means you feel anger, but don't let it dictate your response. You feel insulted, but you choose when and how to respond. Nietzsche captured this perfectly. He who cannot command himself will always be commanded by others. Think of it this way. When someone disrespects you publicly, the reactive person argues back, looks defensive, and ultimately appears weak. The disciplined strategist, however, calculates. Maybe he ignores the attack entirely, showing the aggressor is beneath notice. Maybe he delivers one cold, surgical remark that dismantles his opponent's credibility. Either way, he responds from control, not from impulse. This is ruthlessness, icy composure, strategic timing, and the refusal to give anyone the power to pull your strings. 3. Power matters more than likability. We live in a culture obsessed with being liked. Social media rewards us for every heart, every thumbs up, every follow. But here's the brutal truth. Being liked will never protect you. Being respected will. When people like you, they feel comfortable crossing boundaries because they assume you'll forgive them. But when people respect you, they hesitate because they know there will be consequences. Machiavelli said it plainly. It is much safer to be feared than loved. Carl Jung would add that when we sacrifice our authenticity just to be liked, we abandon the shadow, that raw, powerful side of ourselves that demands respect. A man without his shadow is agreeable, but weak. A man who integrates it becomes formidable. So stop asking, will they like me if I do this? Instead ask, will this increase or decrease my power? Likability is fragile. Respect endures. 4. Decisive action creates superiority. Weak people reveal themselves through hesitation. They threaten but never follow through. They issue warnings that everyone learns to ignore. And over time, their influence decays because no one takes them seriously. Machiavelli understood this weakness. He wrote, "If an injury has to be done to a man, it should be so severe that his vengeance need not be feared." Translated into psychological terms, this means, when you act, act decisively. Don't waste energy on empty threats. Don't engage in endless back and forth arguments. Strike once, strike clearly, and leave no doubt. Think of the person in your life who constantly disrespects you, interrupting, undermining, dismissing your ideas. The weak response is to plead or complain. The powerful response is to make one strategic move that shifts the entire dynamic. Call them out publicly in a way that shatters their credibility, or exclude them from something they value most. When you act decisively, people remember. Your reputation becomes a warning. Disrespecting you is costly. And unlike constant nagging or emotional explosions, a single decisive move communicates real power. In the game of influence, it's not the number of moves you make, it's their weight. 5. Perception management is reality control. Here's the uncomfortable truth. People rarely judge you by who you really are. They judge you by what they see, by the signals you send, by the story they believe about you. Machiavelli captured it perfectly. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. This means your reputation, your image, your perceived value. These matter more than objective reality. And if you're not controlling that perception, someone else is doing it for you. Think of two people who accomplish the same task. One documents it strategically, frames it as a success story, and showcases it with confidence. The other stays silent, assuming their work will speak for itself. Who gets recognition? Who gets opportunities? Always the one who controls the perception. This isn't about being fake, it's about being intentional. Your posture, your tone of voice, and your presence in a room all speak before you utter a word. If you walk in with confidence, people unconsciously treat you as important. If you shrink, they unconsciously dismiss you. The reality is simple. Perception creates power. Manage it, or be managed by others. 6. Narrative control is psychological warfare. Every event in your life can be told in multiple ways. The same action can be framed as confidence or arrogance, leadership or tyranny. The person who controls the narrative controls the meaning. Machiavelli observed, "Men in general judge more from appearances than from reality." This is why narrative warfare is one of the most powerful tools in human psychology. It's not just about what happens, it's about the story people believe about what happened. Imagine you end a toxic friendship. If you stay silent, the other person may frame you as selfish, abandoning them when they needed you most. But if you get ahead of the narrative, "I had to set boundaries to protect my mental health from someone who refused to respect me," suddenly you're not selfish, you're strong. Politicians do this daily. Leaders do it instinctively. And so must you. Because if you don't frame your story, someone else will. Narrative control is not deception, it's interpretation. It is understanding that truth is not only in the facts, but also in the lens through which people view those facts. Master the lens, and you master the battlefield. 7. Systematic consequences create authority. Anger is weak. Emotional threats are predictable. But systems are uncheckable. Machiavelli knew this well. A wise ruler doesn't depend on moods or reactions, but on structures that enforce themselves. Think of how you handle disrespect. The reactive person yells, argues, pleads. But the strategist creates a simple system. Those who respect my time gain access to me. Those who waste it lose me. No speeches, no threats, just natural consequences. This creates something extraordinary, authority without effort. People modify their behavior not because you nag them, but because they know the rules of access. They know disrespecting you means exclusion. And they know appreciation leads to reward. The beauty of systems is that they remove personality from the equation. No one can accuse you of being emotional or unfair. The system is simply there, neutral and predictable. And over time, your authority becomes undeniable. A system is more powerful than a speech. It trains others to treat you with respect, automatically. 8. Silent dominance is ultimate power. The final principle is perhaps the most unsettling. Real power does not shout. Real dominance does not advertise itself. Those who constantly proclaim their toughness or influence are usually the weakest. True strength moves in silence. Machiavelli compared rulers to both the lion and the fox. The lion frightens wolves, the fox detects traps. The true strategist is both strong when strength is required, cunning when subtlety is needed. But above all, he doesn't telegraph his moves. Silent dominance means your influence is felt, not declared. You don't announce your strategies, you let outcomes speak. You don't warn people of your power, they discover it too late. You don't tell the world you're in control, you let the world feel your presence without fully understanding why. Think of the most powerful people you've met. They weren't the loudest. They weren't the ones constantly reminding others of their strength. Their aura alone commanded respect. Their silence was heavier than other people's noise. In a world full of shouting, silent dominance is the ultimate power move. When we look at Machiavelli's philosophy, it is easy to reduce it to politics, to the ruthless strategies of rulers and kings. But the truth is, his ideas cut much deeper than politics. They strike at the heart of the human condition itself. Because beneath all the schemes of courts and battlefields, the struggle Machiavelli described is the same struggle we face every day. The tension between our ideals and reality, between our longing for fairness and the brutal mechanics of life. Sigmund Freud once argued that human beings are driven by two primal instincts: the pursuit of pleasure and the pursuit of power. We like to pretend we are moral creatures, guided by justice and compassion. But underneath that veneer lies a raw animal impulse. We crave control. We desire dominance. Even our noblest actions often mask a hidden hunger for recognition, validation, or authority. Freud's insight was that our unconscious mind, the part we often ignore, pulls us toward this hunger, whether we admit it or not. Machiavelli, centuries earlier, saw this same truth. He stripped away the mask and said, "People are not as virtuous as they appear, and anyone who builds their life on that illusion will eventually collapse." His brilliance was not in inventing cruelty, but in refusing to look away from the darkness that already existed in human nature. Then there is Nietzsche, who pushed this idea further with his concept of the Bermensch, the higher man. Nietzsche believed that most people live as slaves to social conditioning, bound by morality they never chose, chained by rules they never questioned. The path to greatness, he said, is to rise above these inherited illusions, to embrace one's will to power, and to shape life with strength rather than submission. In this sense, Machiavelli and Nietzsche were speaking the same language. Both called for liberation from the lies of fairness. Both demanded that we step into the raw arena of existence with courage and clarity. And then we turn to Carl Jung, who saw that much of our suffering comes from what he called the shadow, the hidden, denied aspects of ourselves. We are taught to be polite, agreeable, and nice, and in that process, we bury our aggression, our ambition, our hunger for dominance. But suppressing the shadow doesn't make it disappear, it makes us weak, vulnerable to manipulation, and disconnected from our true power. Jung argued that the path to individuation, the path to becoming whole, requires us to integrate the shadow, to recognize our darker impulses not as enemies, but as allies to be disciplined and directed. Machiavelli's ruthless lessons, then, can be seen as an invitation to confront the shadow, to stop living half a life of niceness, and to embrace the fullness of our being. What unites all these thinkers, Freud, Nietzsche, Jung, and Machiavelli, is a refusal to accept the illusion of a fair, orderly universe where virtue is always rewarded. They each, in their own way, declared that reality is harsher, but also more liberating than we've been taught. For Freud, freedom comes from facing our unconscious drives. For Nietzsche, it comes from transcending herd morality and embracing the will to power. For Jung, it comes from integrating the shadow into a strong, authentic self. And for Machiavelli, it comes from mastering the dark rules of human nature rather than being destroyed by them. So where does that leave us? It leaves us at a crossroads. On one side, there's comfort, the dream of fairness, the hope that kindness will be enough, the fantasy that the world will recognize us simply for being good. On the other side, there is clarity, the harsh acceptance that life is not fair, that people will betray, manipulate, and exploit. and that the only path to freedom is to awaken, to see through the illusion, and to step into the game with eyes wide open. This is not a call to become cruel. It is a call to become awake, to stop abandoning your own power in the name of ideals that others use against you, to recognize, as Machiavelli did, that those who understand human psychology rule those who don't, and more importantly, to claim sovereignty over yourself so that no one, not a boss, not a manipulator, not a system, can ever dominate your mind again. Existential philosophers have always asked the same question: how do we live authentically in a world that is indifferent to us? Machiavelli offers one answer: stop expecting fairness, start embracing strategy. Nietzsche offers another: rise above the herd and become the master of your fate. Jung whispers another: reclaim your shadow and become whole. Together, they reveal a path of awakening, not a path of blind goodness, but a path of power fused with consciousness. Because in the end, the greatest slavery is not political. It is psychological. And the only true freedom is the freedom of a mind that refuses to be naive, refuses to be dominated, and refuses to remain asleep in the illusion of fairness. The world has never been fair, and it never will be. That is the truth Machiavelli forced us to confront centuries ago, and it is the same truth we still resist today. We are told to wait our turn, to be patient, to be kind, and that somehow life will reward us for playing fair. But look closely, does it ever really work that way? Or have you already seen with your own eyes that the bold, the cunning, and the ruthless rise while the passive remain invisible? Machiavelli's message was not a call to cruelty. It was a call to clarity. He dared to say what others would not, that love fades, respect is fragile, but power endures. He understood that human beings are not guided primarily by fairness or morality, but by self-interest, perception, and dominance. To ignore this is to live in a dream. To face it is to finally awaken. This awakening is not about becoming heartless. It is about integrating the strength you have denied. Carl Jung warned that when we repress our shadow, we become weak, exploitable, and disconnected from our authentic power. Nietzsche challenged us to rise above herd morality and to become creators of our own destiny. Freud revealed that our unconscious drives for power and pleasure shape us whether we admit it or not. Each of these thinkers pointed toward the same truth Machiavelli declared: those who understand the hidden mechanics of human psychology rule those who do not. So where does this leave you? It leaves you with a choice. You can remain the invisible one, the overlooked, the underestimated, the person waiting endlessly for fairness to appear. Or you can choose to awaken, to shed the illusion, and to step into life as a strategist. This does not mean abandoning your goodness. It means fusing your goodness with strength. It means becoming someone who cannot be ignored, someone who commands respect, someone who acts decisively and lives authentically. The time for waiting is over. Every day you hesitate, someone else moves faster. Every day you cling to fairness, someone else rewrites the rules. Every day you suppress your power, someone else uses theirs to dominate you. The world will not hand you respect. You must claim it. So I challenge you, declare it now: I refuse to be psychologically dominated by others. Let this be the moment you stop living as a victim of illusions and start living as a strategist of your own destiny. Because the world does not need more people sleepwalking through life, hoping that fairness will save them. It needs more individuals who see clearly, who act boldly, and who live awake. The choice is yours, but remember this: the game is already being played. The only question is whether you will remain a pawn or finally step onto the board as a master. If this message has resonated with you, don't let it fade into the background noise of your day. Take a moment right now to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next awakening lesson. And in the comments below, share the principle that struck you the hardest, the insight that made you see your own life differently. Because your reflection might be the spark that awakens someone else, The game of life has always been rigged. But now, you have the tools to stop being its victim and start becoming its master.